All right, we're back in the Colossal Collection, Volume 3 of Tomb Raider, and we're going to be talking about the. They call it Tomb Raider Volume 1, but it is Volume 1 of Dark Horse's Tomb Raider. We're going to tackle the first 6 issues. The arc is called Season of the Witch, and this is by Gail Simone. Now, this came out 2014. Right in that era where it seemed like Gail Simone was writing everything because she had probably the quintessential New 52 DC run, like, comic with Batgirl. Batgirl, now known as Batgirl New 52 or Batgirl Rebirth, was I think it was 34 issues long. It was very good. It Out of all the Bat Family books that came out in the New 52, in my humble opinion, Batgirl is the best one. By far. And I know there's a lot of Scott Snyder Batman fans, and that early stuff of that run is very good, but then Zero Year happened, and Zero Year is a shit show. And after that, it was pretty much a shit show, and I don't get the appeal. And Grant Morrison did whatever Grant Morrison wanted, and then went off to do nonsense in Grant Morrison fashion. Peter J. Tomasi's Batman and Robin stuff's good, but we're not here to talk about DC. We're here to talk about Gail Simone. Gail Simone, after Batgirl, and then before that Birds of Prey, really, she became like the woman comic book writer, especially when it came to IP work. So right around this time, Dynamite hired her to do Red Sonja, and she did the Plague storyline, which was very good, from what I remember. And then she did this, Season of the Witch. And I think the next 2 arcs as well are by Gail Simone. And we're going to talk about Season of the Witch. This is a direct sequel to Tomb Raider 2014, back when this was considered technically a Tomb Raider prequel rather than full-blown reboot. There is no Trinity in this. We are still talking about the weird cult from the first game. So what's this story about? Apparently, the survivors of the island, including Lara, grabbed a bunch of artifacts off of the island. When did they do this? Well, I don't know. It's not explained very well until the end, and then there's like a twist with it, and it's like, well, it didn't make sense, so I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. But anyway, they took these items off the island, and it's causing all these calamities. Jonah essentially gets possessed until he's not. The black woman that was a cop, she's angry at Lara because she's always angry at Lara. That's her character, is just being angry at Lara and having a daughter. She's whatever. Lara's friend, who was possessed at the end of the game, is kidnapped again. And Lara's trying to piece everything together, stop this cult, and they have to go back to the island. That's really it. Now, you might be wondering, like, why I bring up Jonah by name and not the rest. Because Jonah is the only character in the Survive series to last as long as Lara does. Jonah's in all 3 games. Jonah has plot armor like Lara's plot armor. And the rest of them don't really have that. I don't like Season of the Witch. I mean, it's pretty obvious by my tone of voice that I don't like it, but I really don't like this. And it's not because of Gail Simone. I think Gail Simone's doing the best she can with her hands tied behind her back. The biggest problem with this is, believe it or not the story itself, although the story itself is very mediocre at best. It's the art. The art in this could best be described as flat. I drew this on a Wacom tablet. Now let's take something like this. This is from Top Cow's Tomb Raider. You can literally pull from just about any issue of that, and you have beautiful art. And then we look at this from the Survive series from Gail Simone's run, and this is what it looks like. I'll give the artist credit. They can really draw guns. They can't draw anything else. It's the flattest. It's flat. It's bland. It looks like stuff I saw in my beginning digital art class when I was at community college. I think it's terrible. And it, with a comic book, you need to have at least decent art with a good story in order for it to, you know, have any impact. And Dark Horse used to actually care about art. So it's shocking that this art is as lazy as it is, but it just goes to show how far Dark Horse had sank by 2014. Because this is a prime example of them just not caring about any of their IPs. And this was a newly acquired IP, and they just did not care. I don't know if Crystal Dynamics didn't allow them to care. I don't know what the deal was, but this is just straight to dumpster crap. And like, we're gonna get into it more as these comics go on, but I don't like Survive Lara. She's a completely different character than Lara from either Top Cow or any of the other previous games prior to the Survive series. And she only gets worse as a character as time goes on. This is going to be a real interesting experiment to see where her character goes in these comics. Because I have a feeling it's not going to go anywhere. I think she's just going to have all of her trauma and just be whiny all the time, just like she is in the games. That's my prediction. Now, you gotta understand, I did read some of this when it came out, but I gave up after issue 3, because this stuff is so boring. Now, it does pick up, with issue 4, there's a bit more action, and it becomes more action-oriented, but still, it shouldn't have been 6 issues. And the irony is that Top Cow Tomb Raider, typically each arc was 2 issues, and they always felt a little rushed. Like, you could have had one more issue. This should have been maybe 4, if not 3 issues. There is no reason to drag this out, except for we need a right for the trade, because that's what everyone did back at the 2010s. Everything has, and they still do it to this day, everything has to be written to be collected in a trade paperback to sell on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. That is how comics are written now, and it doesn't always work. Certain stories don't need to be 4 to 6 issues. They just don't. And this is a prime example of 3 probably would have been perfect. You could have pushed it to 4 and it would have been fine. But 3 issues. Especially because we're retreading the game that had just come out at this time. We're retreading things like you had to play the game in order to understand what's going on, which has never been a thing in Tomb Raider comics prior to this. Never. You can read the Top Cow Tomb Raider comics, including the adaptation of Angel of Darkness, and know what's going on. Even in Journeys, I knew mostly what was going on. Now that was, there were a few like weird time skips in that, and that was done on purpose. But this comic, Season of the Witch, if you have not played the Tomb Raider 2014 game or seen gameplay of it and like the ending of it, you are not gonna know anything about the Yamatai stuff at all. And it's not going to make any sense. And it's frustrating. It's essentially like this cult, they kind of remind me of Trinity in some ways. because they do similar things, but Trinity wasn't a thing yet, so we just have this, and it just feels lazy. What would I give this? 2 out of 5. This is probably one of the worst Gail Simone comics I've ever read. So anyway, have a nice day.